Hello, everyone. All right, so in the middle of a drive, and my "it's fracking cold" intro to last week was kind of spot on because here it is, the week that the episode is releasing that I'm making this recording, and the cold front, that Arctic cold front, is already blown into Texas. I'm still driving to work because, as my manager said, the company won't close the store just because it's cold. But it's like 21 right now where I'm at, and it's almost midday. So it's not going to get warmer. It's only going to get colder. I know anyone else from where you're at, it is not very uncommon to have it be this cold around this time of the year, but I live in Texas. And if it ever gets this cold, like it used to kind of get this cold, and we used to have like off and on snows. I remember when I was younger, we used to it seemed like almost every other year we used to have snowfall in Texas. But then, of course, the world changed, climate changed, everything else changed. And now it's very, very rare that it actually gets below like 40 or even close to 35 or freezing here in Texas during any time of the year. We did have like some weird anomalies, like it snowing in March, February and March because it was Easter weekend when it snowed. I think it was April actually. So we do have like moments like that every now and then, just because Texas has been like a very weird spot for weather. Like, there was a whole documentary I saw about it that was like 15 minutes. Just explained why Texas has the weird weather, why Texas always has like what we call bipolar down here in Texas. So yeah, it's very, very fitting that I started that off this week today because it's also supposed to get like the coldest is supposed to be tomorrow, which is Monday, and then Tuesday when the episode comes out. After that, it's supposed to warm up, hopefully, God willing. And then it's supposed to be rain, precipitation that's supposed to ice over sometime this afternoon into tomorrow morning. So we'll see if I get another episode done on a drive. I probably would, but it probably wouldn't be tomorrow. Might be recording another episode on my way drive back just so I can again build up that catalog in case something like this happens. But I'm almost halfway to work right now, so I figured I got like 40 minutes before I got to clock in. Why not just try and make it quick? Um, kind of wanted to talk about something that I've been thinking about with Marvel in my head, but I really would like more time with that than just possibly 35 minutes, 40 minutes. So we'll save that until I might start that on my drive back home. Just gonna start it early and get the recording early. Just because, again, this app will only let me record an hour at most. And the episode or the Marvel topic probably won't be 2 whole hours. It'll probably be maybe an hour and a half, hour 45, but it still warrants like a part one and a part two, which I don't mind doing because it is a very, very big topic full of very, very big thoughts in my head. And it's not necessarily just being a Marvel fanboy and praising Marvel and saying all Marvel's done or talking about the history of Marvel. A little bit of the history of Marvel just because they have to, because it's relevant for the subject that we really want to go down. But mainly the main issue that I see going on with Marvel right now, aside from the woke scripts or the uh, inclusion scripts, as I like to call it, because some of them aren't really woke, but they still try to be very inclusive of a lot of things. And uh, that's that's part of the issue. The other issue will be mainly the focal point of uh, the discussion. I don't want to give too much away, just because I don't want to like start going on a tangent and then ramble away my main points before I even actually record the episode in full. But you know what? Let's just talk about Hollywood and inclusion, because that actually is like another thing that's just suddenly like that's interesting. And it's been a big thing, and it's been like a big argument point for a lot of moviegoers because some people feel that with the we of the world, the agenda of a lot of individuals, mainly the younger generations, that it's trying to be forced on us through the way in which we consume our media, whether it be TV shows, movies, podcasts sometimes, or even just company decisions. And while there is like a bit of there is a bit of truth to that, there's also another counter side to it, another side to the coin, and that is just ultimately money. Like I've been in the film industry, and when you're in the film industry, as well as I've been in the military as well, everyone has these assumptions on both occupations, both fields, both industries. Everyone always throws around military grade, like it's supposed to be the latest and greatest and the most dangerous and most durable and the best of the best, essentially, because people expect the military to have the best of the best. When in reality, everything that the military has, from the weapons we fire, the trucks we drive, even the body armor we wear, is actually made by the lowest bidder. Yes, the government doesn't want to spend a lot of the money because it has a set budget. And so they still have to buy and pay for everything that we have to have. So helmets, body armor, gloves, knee pads, eye protection, hearing protection, boots, the uniforms we wear, the Humvees we drive, again, the weapons we fire. They have to pay for all of that. Even the bullets, there's no real like cheap way to do that. There's a just because the bullet's going to do its job no matter what. I've never really heard of anyone doing a cheap bullet. It just there's a formula to how the bullet works, so there's no like cheap way of doing it. But yeah, they have to pay for all of that, and they have a set budget. And while everyone looks at the government gave the Defense Department um, $55 billion. I'm just starting out a number um, to spend on the military, and everyone's going, well, why don't we just take that and put it towards paying off some of the national debt? They could go towards this. They could go towards that. There's other ways they can allocate that money than to just put it into the armed forces, which is really freaking dumb. Uh, just because one, we're one of the powerhouse countries. I know this is going on a side tangent, but there is a point to it. We are a powerhouse country, and the reason we are a powerhouse country is because we also have a good military to defend it. Yes, America's military on a lot of like moral decisions and whatnot is very, very kind of gray and not the greatest. But the way that we are trained and the way that we maneuver and go through our procedures is been very heavily optimized so that we could be more effective. And through that, like that budget, almost every single set of that budget goes towards something. It's not just, hey, we're giving the government or we're giving the Defense Department $55 billion to spend on whatever they want. No, that's allocated to payroll for soldiers, anyone who's enlisted and working with the army on military bases. It's not just soldiers. There's also like my dad was um, there's civil servants, civilians that work on the military base but aren't military, and so like that they get their payroll from that budget. The soldiers get their payroll from that budget, and so about maybe a third to possibly a half, not even a half, probably like this half is being way too generous. Probably like a quarter to a third of it goes towards payroll. The other goes towards maintenance because the military doesn't like to buy a lot of new things if they don't have to. They will literally have bidding wars if they need something new or improved. They will have bidding wars over for contracts for companies to make those things for the military, and they choose the lowest bidder. They don't sit there and say, "Hey, we can get this made for X amount of money." Because when like the dragon skin body armor was announced and shown to be really effective against a lot of munitions, the government was interested, and I think it was about like 5 grand per troop to or per soldier to have one made. And when you have like 300,000 soldiers, it adds up real quick. And so they instead just opted for a company that does the Kevlar, the plates, and they can do it for probably around like maybe 500, 800 a soldier. And that saves money. Because the more money saved on the end can go towards like an emergency fund in case something is needed or something suddenly pops up and they need that extra money for more munitions, more vehicles from the companies they've already contracted to make those things. They can. And so it's again, they don't buy the latest and greatest. They will literally pay for can you make it cheap and once it's made, will it work and not just break down after a few uses? Because even when we get trained on vehicles and we get trained on weapons, we have to learn how to fix them if they do break down. Because there's levels to it. I won't go into that just because that's even more of a tangent. Uh, but we're trained to fix it on our own because, or at least on certain parts of it on our own that we can just quick shoot and troubleshoot. Because again, they don't want to spend the money, and they know these things are not the most reliable, but they get the job done when they need to get the job done 70% of the time. And so Hollywood is almost the same way. You get put into a role where, hey, we want to make this movie, and the studio is saying, okay, we like the idea. How much can you make the movie for? And if you say I can make it, I need $700 million to make this movie, and they will haggle you down. They will literally go through line by line over what you want versus what is needed. And then they'll sit there and say, okay, well, we'll just give you 340 million or 500 million to make this movie. And there is no haggling on your side after that. It's either take it or leave it. And if you take it, that is your budget. That everything has to come out of that budget. It has to go for payroll for everyone who's working on the movie, not just your actors who are getting millions and millions of dollars off of that. If depending on their agent and depending upon themselves too, because there's stories about actors taking really huge price cuts to do a movie so that it can be made in the quality that it needs to, then it can meet those standards. But it goes towards payroll. It goes towards rentals for equipment because the studio doesn't just have cameras, lights, audio equipment, trucks lying around. You yourself have to find a place that either find people that have their own cameras and own lights that can kind of save money, or you just do what everyone else does and have to go to a rental house that has all this stuff and you rent from them what you need, and it's a daily rate. It's also they also have them insured, so the insurance is also tacked onto that. And then speaking of insurance, you also have to have insurance when you're making a movie for various things. You have to have equipment insurance. You have to have personnel insurance. You have to have so many insurances to make a film, just in case not just the actors get hurt, but a crew member gets hurt or the equipment gets damaged. So all that comes out of that budget as well. If you're doing like CG heavy stuff, computer graphics, you have to pay for all those digital artists to sit there in front of a computer for hours and hours and hours of the day making these things happen for your film. And while back in the early days, CG was still pretty expensive and practical was a lot cheaper, it's kind of flopped now because there's now uh, art houses or digital studios that they just have a fleet of artists, digital artists that will all work on a film. And so you don't just have like a small handful that can actually do it. There's a lot of people that have gotten into that field that can do that job. And they do it really well, to be honest with you. And then we'll just touch on that part a little bit later with the controversies and like the badness of it as well. But all of that, and then you think every single dime of that is done for the movie. It is true because they're, for the most part, because not only on top of like doing all the actual principal shooting, um, you also have to pay your editors who are going to be editing the film afterwards. You have to pay the ADR studios that have the actors come in and record voice lines that weren't properly recorded or didn't come through clear enough. So you have to pay that time for the studio. You also have to pay. Uh, Sometimes the studios will sit there and say you have to do everything in that budget, meaning you also have to pay for marketing out of that budget as well. And marketing is fucking expensive. Other times they have just, the studio will give you X amount of money for shooting and an X amount of money for marketing because they want to market the hell out of it. Because when you market the hell out of it, it gets into more people's consciousness and the more people that kind of get curious about it or get excited to see the movie. It means more butts are going to be in seats. When more butts are in seats, that means there's a lot of ticket sales, and the studios get their money back off of ticket sales. And that's also like a bit of the side of the coin that a lot of people don't see and know because every review podcast, every industry podcast, or even like every critic will sit there and say like, oh well, the movie did well financially, meaning hey, it made its money back and then some profit. So like that means hey, throw out a crazy example with some crazy numbers. Iron Man was made on a budget of $260 million and it made $640 a million, 640 million overall, domestic and international. It'd be like, hey, the movie did well financially because it made back the money that it cost to make the movie and then some. The That's usually kind of like how a studio will gauge on if a film is doing well, not just the budget or the money it makes back, because it can make a killing, but if it didn't make back what it cost, then it's a loss on the studio. So like James Cameron's Avatar cost a little over a billion. This again, probably true. Probably, I'm just throwing out a number. A little over a billion to make, and the movie made 1.5 billion. So it'd be like, okay, it made its money back. It took a while because it has to make $1 billion to break even, and then it made 500 million after that in profit essentially. But the fact that a movie can make it back $1 billion budget still, that's a big feat, and hey, kudos. But if a movie costs 130 million to make and it makes 75 million in the box office, both domestic and international, it's a flop because not many people saw it. And with ticket prices kind of being how they are, depending upon the movie theaters you go to, like all that gets accounted for. There's usually like an average that they'll sit there and say, like the average movie ticket for across the country versus how many tickets sold, just to kind of make the math a little easier. But there's that part of it, but the real part of it is if you're ever an actor and you sign on, you opt in to get residual checks from the movie. basically like, hey, the movie does well, it's been a hit, we're going to give you a cut of everything that's sold off of the movie afterwards, whether it be t-shirts, the DVD, Blu-ray sales, digital copies, um, action figures, soundtrack, you name it. You're going to get a cut of it. How that works is even though the movie might have made its money back for the production, if there was an equal amount for the marketing, meaning if a movie cost 350 million to shoot, but then the studio allotted 350 million to market, it has to make back that entire budget. So it has to make back 700 million overall. And if the movie made 680 million, then it all goes towards that 7 million that it has to make before it can start being profitable. You can start getting residual checks. And then off of that, the George Lucas thing is like, let's say the director goes out and starts mentioning the movie. Hey, like I'm going to Chicago because I'm going to be on Good Morning America and I'm going to be talking about the movie. They can write that off as like a business expense. The flight, the hotel, as a business expense, and that adds to the budget as well for the marketing because he technically is talking about the movie and marketing it. But then you get like the DVD sales, everything else on that, and that starts to fill in the gap of what was left that the movie has to completely break even. And then once any other profit comes past that 700 million, that gets split up evenly again to everyone who signed on for the residual checks. And then they start getting residual checks. That's why you see some actors that are like, hey, I just got my residual check for this movie, and it's like $1.17. Or you'll see like young actors now who were like, yeah, I still get residual checks of like 63 cents for the TV show I did 15 years ago. It's because those broke even on the entire budget and they got paid for syndication and whatnot. But anyway, how does all that play into the way that movies are made and the money that is supposed to being chased after or pursued by making these movies? So the movie studios will always, not just movie studios, any company, any industry will look at the way of the world is right now and see what people find important. And they will use that to make money. And the main thing I told my kids about is my kids always go big on Pride Month. Is they're like before there wasn't a lot of Pride stuff. There was a Pride. They started the Pride Month, but there wasn't a lot of Pride merchandise for it. So you either had to make your own or just find anything, the colors that you wanted to represent or show your support for. But then out of nowhere, a lot of companies started having, hey, we're having Pride Month exclusive merch. If you like us and you're also part of that community, feel free to go this and we'll throw some money towards what other charities that this community finds awesome or that supports this community. And the company does that for two reasons. Why? One, because it actually shows that they care. They love you, that you are important to them, and they want to support you. The main reason is because money. They know that there isn't a lot of Pride stuff. But now almost every company does Pride something or other in a way, shape, or form. But they're like, hey, if you like us and we like you can buy some of this stuff to show that you love us and show that we support you. And it's like $30 or $40, and it was like, well, it's a one-time thing. I can spend $30 or $40 for a T-shirt or a mug or some pants that just say Pride with the little logo on there. That's advertising. You're now wearing their stuff. You paid $40 for their merch. And once Pride Month is done, that merch is gone. They go back to just doing what they do. Well, they've always continued doing what they do, which is to make money off of you. So the fact that you find Pride important, they're gonna release Pride merch to get more money out of you. The fact that the whole Black Lives Matter was going on with Nike. Nike saying, "Hey, we get it. We support you. You support us. We support you." And everyone was going big on Nike, especially when Colin Kaepernick signed on and became like the face of them for like I don't know what 5 months. But as simply put in the Euphoria special episode 1 is I played this for my kids and I'm like it is completely true, especially when you think about like how businesses run. Um, Rue's sponsor was saying like, yeah, I was at the Nike store and they had a picture of like a mural of black people saying, "Hey, you know, we support you," or like we are you. And he's like, it made me feel great. It made me feel like Nike really saw me and cares. And then I went to look at a pair of shoes, and it was $150 or $170 for a pair of shoes. Didn't matter what color I was, they were still charging $170 for them shoes. And yet here they are with a sign on their wall that said, "We care about you." And that's when I realized Nike don't give a shit about me. And that is 100% true. Not just Nike don't give a shit about you, but the company is there to make money off of what you find important. They're going to find a way to weave it into what they are and what their products are so they can get money off you because they know if they say, "Hey, we support you on this. We see you. We want to stand with you and for you." And then people are going to be like, "Hell yeah." And they're going to throw all kinds of stupid money at that company. That company's not going to give them a discount. That company's not going to give them anything else. That company's going to sit there and say, like, they may support, it may go to charities, it may go to certain things, a portion of it, but that's a portion. You buy $200 shoes and they say, "Hey, 15% of every purchase is going to go to this. 15% of $200 is $30. They're keeping 107. Like you kind of got to be real smart about it. But movies are doing the same thing too. Everyone's talking about inclusion. Everyone's talking about representation. So what are they going to do? If they're hearing that that's important to the main audience, not just the people they want to make movies for, but the main audience, the people who are going to go see these movies, then they're going to put them in there because it's inclusion. Hey, you're in this movie. We wrote a character just for you and put it in this movie so you can enjoy this movie. And they misrepresent so bad because as the younger idiots, yes, I say idiots because they always point to cis white men or just cis straight folk um, writing these scripts and characterizing these characters to what they believe the character is and how the character should act. It's not just the writers; it's also the directors. There's a lot of working parts to it, but that is essentially what has been going on, what has been happening, and they do it for money to get butts in seats, people to pay the tickets to go see those movies, so they can make more money. It hurts stories. It hurts quality of the film. Not even if the story is not there, the quality of the film gets hurt just because you can clearly see there's an agenda that's there. And while the agenda might not be to push for this or push for that, sometimes it is. It's not even 50% of it is not set to one agenda. 50% is set to agenda. Maybe even as close to 70% is set to an agenda, a agenda, not a specific agenda. But they do that because it gets people in the theaters to watch the movie because that's how they make their money back is through the theaters. That's how they make a majority of their money back is through the theaters. After a certain runtime, let's say if the movie's been out for about a month and a half, they stop counting sales just because They already know that, hey, okay, the drop off happens after about 3 weeks. We're just going to keep it, still count in like another week or two just to kind of whatever people like late stragglers, people still hearing about it word of mouth. I want to come and check it out. Hey, we'll still rake in that money. But after that, we're not going to count anymore because this is going to be maybe five, six people seeing it here, five, six people seeing it there. Maybe 10 people go and see it on a Friday night after this. And that's just how the business is. Is it a good thing? No. Is it the way things should be or will continue to be? Possibly. Is the way things should be? No. But Hollywood is a business. And just like I mentioned, every business will follow the trend because that trend leads to money. Especially when younger folks are coming up in this world, they are going to try and pull every single cent they can out of them because the way that the cost of living is right now, and the way that a lot of jobs are, and the way that young people are coming in to adulthood, they're very, very, not very frugal, but they don't have a lot of excess cash, expendable cash that they can just go to a movie 2 or 3 times a week and or a movie every week or like 2 or 3 a weekend and fund into those movies. They're more picky and choosy because they don't have that expendable cash. So they can only go see a movie a month, 2 movies a month. They'd rather just stream because it's cheaper for them to just pay for the streaming service and stream it in their homes. Whereas, the millennials, the Gen X's, Gen Y's, the boomers, they have that expendable cash. They have the means to go see a movie quite often. And if they don't like what they see, they're going to be very vocal about it because they don't want their money going to that. And so it's really eye opening once you see the industry, the world in that way, because then you really start to get a view of how things operate that's beyond you. Everyone wants change. Everyone wants positivity. Everyone wants a lot of equality, unification in this world. But when it comes down to the brass taxes, there's bigger change, bigger movement that you have to enforce. And essentially, you're trying to stop a machine that's been moving effortlessly for a century now, over a century. And you're going to try and stop that and then change the way it works. It takes a lot. It won't happen. The machine won't stop on a dime. And the way everyone puts it is you're a spoke on the wheel. The wheel's going to keep turning with or without you. And it's not just a nihilistic way of thinking about it. It's not a pessimistic way of thinking about it. It is almost a very realistic thing because for you to actually make the change to happen as fast as you want it to, you have to get almost to the tip top, to the dead center, the core of that industry, and have used your influence then to change it. And there's only one CEO. There's only one head of the table. There's only one executive decision maker. And so you have to beat out over 1 billion people and the person that's currently in that position to get to that position and make that change. Is it impossible? No, because people make it there, people step down, the position's always going to be there. It's just real fucking hard. And this is not me trying to sit there and say, hey, don't chase your dreams or change is impossible, because it's not. Change happens with time. Time's going to keep going. Change is going to keep going too. A change is going to be different though, depending upon who's in power and what decisions they try to make and go after. Uh, there's so much more topics I want to get to this. I just put into work. I got like 5 minutes before I got to clock in. But trying to be studios assuming we want inclusion and representation has been really hurting the industry a lot lately. Because while people do want to be included and do want to be represented, they are being misrepresented, and they're not seeing the proper inclusion that they're wanting. And for anyone who tries to properly represent and include themselves, sometimes they make a splash, sometimes they don't. Just because people's preconceptions of a certain group of people, certain characters, certain mindsets don't align with when you go to go see a movie that you know is fake, it's escapism. You just want characters that are easy to read, easy to understand because the plot is so heavy that you have to catch up as you go along. Or you have characters that are really deep and dense, but the plot has to be very, very simple because you can't take a lot of information from two different things while fully watching the movie, while fully understanding it and getting the gravity of everything. You just can't. Um, like ask anyone who's watched Breaking Bad, try to binge watch Breaking Bad. It is fucking impossible from what I've been told to try and binge watch the entire series um, straight. A lot of people have to take a break, even though they've seen it plenty of times. They still have to take a break and digest everything that they felt that they've been given. And I mean, who are we to sit there and say that they're wrong on it? So I'm going to end this for now. Might make this a part two, and then do the Marvel stuff later. Possibly not. The main thing I want to get across though is while everything that in this world is kind of set in stone, set in its ways, that doesn't mean that we can't even make like a dent. We can't invoke the change. We can't even spark the inspiration for change. But the main way that, of course, everyone says that's on Facebook, and the other side of the coin is you're going to spend it no matter what, but vote with your wallets. Uh, a wise man once said, "To whom you give your money is to whom you give your power." So if you're going to go see a movie because it's so bad and you want to see how bad it is, you're giving that studio your power for showing that there's interest in characters and stories like that. If you say, I don't want to support Nike because of what they support, look into all Nike owns because Nike is just not Nike. And if you support any of those companies with your wallet, you're still supporting Nike. And Nike's always Nike and a lot of big corporations they all have found a way to where they get their hands into a lot of different pots to where they can still get the money off you in some way or another. But film recommendation, They Live. That's another great film to watch, especially about this topic if you're a little more interested in everything I have to think. It does make you a bit jaded and a bit nihilistic once you get down to brass taxes on it, though. Just because you're like very, very picky and choosy. You become one of those stubborn people of like, I want to know where my money's going to before I spend it. Like, where's my pennies going? What am I paying for? What am I getting? Who am I supporting? And ultimately, like, I hit that point a few years ago, but ultimately I've come to the point where I'm just like, I'll just buy what I buy, like what I like. Doesn't mean I support them. Not really. They make quality things, even though everything else about them is kind of shitty. Uh, because that's just the way of the world. There's going to be good and bad. There's necessary evils. There's necessary goods. And so you can't just be completely good to try to abolish bad things because the world relies on balance. That's another lesson. The world relies on balance, and you have to have the bad with the good. Sadly, that is always going to be the case, and that's always the way the world's going to work. Because without that balance, it's going to be utter chaos. If there's too much good, then eventually bad things have to happen for the good to prevail, or good things have to happen for the bad to prevail. Like I said, it's all about balance. I know this is like a very, very random branching out of every which direction episode. Appreciate y'all for driving with me and listening along to these wild ramblings. This is kind of the core of what I go through in my head when I drive to and from work. So I appreciate y'all listening to me. But we'll see y'all next week. Thanks for the ride along. And until then, hope y'all take care of yourselves. Hope you enjoy this year, this month. Hope you're staying safe through all this Arctic air. And I will catch y'all on the next drive.